If the idea of chatting about the weather with a stranger makes your skin crawl, you're not broken. You're just wired in a way that makes small talk feel like sandpaper on your brain. Some people get a tiny dopamine hit from swapping friendly chatter in the elevator or at the coffee machine. Others walk away from the same interaction feeling drained, fake, and weirdly lonelier than before. If that second group sounds like you, the psychology behind it is a lot more interesting and a lot more valid than "you're antisocial" or "you think you're better than everyone." Start with this. People who hate small talk usually don't hate people. They hate barriers. Introvert researchers and writers often describe small talk as a wall, not a bridge, an entire conversation that lets two people talk without really meeting. The script is predictable. How's it going? Busy. Weather's wild, huh? Yeah. Nothing dangerous gets said, but nothing real does either. For depth-oriented brains, that feels like wasted potential. Psychology articles on people who hate small talk keep circling the same traits: high need for introspection, a craving for cognitive depth, and a strong preference for authenticity over performance. If your inner world is loud, layered, and constantly processing, surface-level chatter doesn't even register as stimulation. It registers as noise. There's also an energy economy issue. Introverts and highly sensitive people run on a limited social battery. Every interaction spends some of that energy. Studies and introvert-focused writing both note that small talk depletes that battery quickly because it demands effort, eye contact, smiling, quick responses, without giving back the emotional or intellectual depth that makes socializing feel worth it. One genuinely deep, honest conversation can leave an introvert tired but satisfied. 5 rounds of "so, what do you do?" just leave them tired. Then comes authenticity. A lot of people who loathe small talk score very high on a preference for being genuine. To them, small talk feels like putting on a social mask, acting more upbeat, more interested, or more impressed than they actually feel. Psychologists call this self-congruence, the need for your actions and words to line up with who you feel you are. When conversation becomes a script instead of an honest exchange, that alignment snaps, and the discomfort you feel is your brain yelling, "This isn't me." If you add social anxiety into the mix, the hatred of small talk can get even more intense. For some people, the problem isn't just boredom, it's mental overdrive. Socially anxious individuals report running 2 conversations at once: the external small talk and the internal commentary judging every word they say. Because small talk has unclear stakes, you're not solving a clear problem, you're just talking. It can feel like a performance with no script, which cranks up the fear of saying the wrong thing. Meanwhile, culture keeps sending a very different message. Workplaces, networking events, even family gatherings quietly treat small talk as a basic life skill, a social lubricant everyone should use smoothly. If you freeze, blank, or give short answers, people often assume you're cold, rude, or uninterested. The reality, for you, might be that your brain is hungry for substance, not that you're against connection. Here's the paradox. Psychologically, small talk does serve real functions. Neuroscience and social psychology research shows that quick, low-stakes exchanges, comments with a barista, a joke with a coworker, can boost mood and create a sense of belonging even when you barely remember what was said. At a deep level, those little interactions tell the brain, you're not invisible, you're part of the group. From an evolutionary point of view, chit-chat looks less like exchanging information and more like grooming in primates. It keeps the social fabric from tearing. So if you hate small talk, you're caught in a weird tension. On one hand, your wiring pushes you toward depth, authenticity, and internal processing. On the other hand, the culture around you uses small talk as the doorway to everything else:
friendships, opportunities, even just not being seen as hostile. That means constantly facing a choice: burn energy on something that feels pointless, or protect your energy and risk feeling cut off. And that's where a lot of deep thinkers end up lonely. People who despise small talk often assume if we're meant to connect, the conversation will just naturally go deep. But research and first-person accounts say something harsher. People who avoid all casual interaction tend to report more isolation and less sense of community, even if they crave connection intensely. When you skip every shallow on-ramp, you miss the rare ones that would have led to real conversations.
So, what can you actually do with all this? The goal isn't to force yourself to love small talk. It's to stop seeing it as a final destination and start using it as a tool. Introvert writers and psychologists often suggest a simple reframe: treat small talk as a thin layer of ice over deeper water, not as a fake pool you're trapped in forever. Practically, that might look like this. Instead of shutting down when someone asks, "How's your week?" you give a real but low-risk answer that gently tilts the door open. Honestly, weirdly overwhelming, but I did have one good thing happen. Most people will follow the emotional breadcrumb. You've taken a scripted question and added a millimeter of depth, enough that the conversation might skate past weather and into something human. You can also create your own default deeper small talk questions. Instead of "what do you do?" you might ask, "what part of your week do you actually look forward to?" Instead of "how is your weekend?" try, "did anything surprise you this weekend?" These are still light enough to be safe, but they give people permission to answer like a person, not a LinkedIn profile. The other side of the psychology is self-permission. When you understand that your hatred of small talk comes from traits like depth-seeking, authenticity, and a careful energy budget, it shifts from character flaw to setting you need to manage. You can start planning your social life around that. Fewer but more intentional gatherings, one-on-one meetups instead of groups, or showing up for the first 45 minutes of an event instead of all night. You're not required to brute force your way into enjoying situations your nervous system finds exhausting. And if you're someone who doesn't hate small talk, but knows someone who does, this is your reminder. It's usually not about you. People who go quiet during chit-chat aren't necessarily judging you or rejecting the connection. Their brain just doesn't light up until the conversation drops a little deeper. And by the time it does, they're often already tired from pretending. So here's the real takeaway. If you hate small talk, it doesn't mean you're bad at conversation. It means you're bad at meaningless conversation. And you're not alone in that. Your brain is wired to look for signal over noise, for honesty over performance, for stories that go somewhere instead of loops that never leave the surface. The challenge and the invitation is to learn the art of using a little bit of small talk as a bridge to the kind of connection you actually crave. Not to become the life of the party, but to stop abandoning every conversation at the shallow end before you've had a chance to see if there's depth. If this resonated with you, here's the call to action. Take one small talk moment this week, a checkout line, a work break, a family gathering, and test a tiny shift. Answer one question a little more honestly than you usually would, or ask one question that invites a real answer instead of a safe one. Then notice what happens. And after you try it, share your story. What's the small talk question you secretly hate the most, and how would you flip it into a real conversation instead? Drop that in the comments, or send this to someone who always goes quiet at parties so they know there's nothing wrong with their brain. They just might be waiting for a conversation that's finally worth having.